Hello everyone, my name is Suman Dua and I'm a registered migration agent at Nationwide Migration and Education. We make new videos every week in regards to Australian migration, and if you are interested in this topic, you may wish to subscribe to our channel. In this video today, we will be talking about Migration Queensland's criteria for 190 and 491 visa for this financial year. Migration Queensland has 4 streams, which are the graduates of a Queensland university, skilled workers living in Queensland, skilled workers living offshore, small business owners operating in regional Queensland. In this video today, we will be talking about the first 3 streams in detail, and we will make a separate video regarding the small business owner stream. To be eligible for any of these streams, you will first need to meet the criteria that is set by the Department of Home Affairs. The Department of Home Affairs criteria requires you to have a points test result of 65 or higher, inclusive of state nomination points. Also have a positive skills assessment in your nominated occupation. You need to be under 45 years of age, and you need to meet the minimum English language requirements of competent unless a higher level is required by your assessing authority. Now let's look at the first stream, which is graduates of a Queensland university. This pathway is for high-performing graduates who have graduated from a Queensland university in a PhD or doctorate, master's degree or bachelor's degree, and are currently onshore in Queensland. Migration Queensland's criteria requires graduate applicants to have a points test result of 80 or higher for the 190 visa, or 65 points or higher for the 491 visa, inclusive of state nomination. They will also need to provide evidence of employment with a Queensland's employer registered in Australia in their nominated occupation or a closely related occupation, excludes PhD and doctorate graduates. They will also need to meet the minimum English language requirement of proficient. But if you are a PhD and doctorate graduates, you must be living onshore in Queensland, have completed 100% of the PhD or doctorate at a Queensland-based institution, have had a decision on thesis and graduated in the last 2 years, and have an occupation on the legislative instrument 19051. Now, a good thing is that there is no job requirement for PhD and doctorate graduates. And if you are a master's graduate and you would like to apply for 190, then you must be living onshore in Queensland, have completed 100% of master's degree by research or coursework at a Queensland-based institution, have graduated in the last 2 years, which means that you need to have a completion letter in the last 2 years, have a master's degree and skills assessment in a STEM field. We will put the STEM fields in the description of the video, and these fields are also available on Migration Queensland's website. For Masters 491 visa criteria, you must be living onshore in regional Queensland, have completed 100% of the master's degree by research or coursework at a Queensland-based institution, and have graduated in the last 2 years, have an occupation on the eligible occupation list, be employed full-time 35 hours per week minimum in Queensland in the nominated or closely related occupation in a regional area. If you are Queensland's bachelor's graduate and would like to apply under the graduate stream, then you are only eligible for a 491 visa. To be eligible, you must be living onshore in regional Queensland, have completed 100% of the bachelor's degree at a Queensland-based institution, have graduated in the last 2 years, have a grade point average of 5.5 or equivalent or higher, have an occupation on the legislative instrument LIN 19/051, be employed full-time 35 hours per week minimum in regional Queensland in the nominated or closely related occupation. If you are a Queensland's bachelor's or master's, which is non-STEM, graduate and would like to apply for a 190 visa, then you will need to look at the skilled workers living in Queensland stream. So let's look at the second stream, which is the skilled workers living in Queensland. To be eligible under this stream, Migration Queensland requires you to have a points test result of 80 or higher for the 190 and 65 or higher for the 491. You also need an Occupation on Home Affairs relevant list of eligible skilled occupations LIN 190/051. You need to have proficient English or higher, except for trades occupations which require competent English. If you are lodging an expression of interest for a 190 visa, ensure that you can provide evidence that you have been living in Queensland and undertaking full-time post-qualification employment, minimum of 35 hours per week over the past 6 months in your nominated occupation immediately prior to submitting your expression of interest. If you are lodging an expression of interest for a 491 visa, ensure that you can provide evidence that you have been living in regional Queensland and undertaking a full-time post-qualification employment minimum of 35 hours per week over the past 3 months in your nominated occupation immediately prior to submitting your expression of interest. You will also need to provide evidence of ongoing employment with a Queensland employer that is registered in Queensland for a further 12 months, minimum of 35 hours per week. For a 491 visa, this must be ongoing employment in a regional area. You will also need to commit to living and working in Queensland for 2 years for a 190 visa and 3 years for the 491 from the visa grant. Now please note that businesses must have an office in Queensland. A virtual office will not be accepted. Just like last year, this year as well, there are caveats for some occupations. For accountants general, only applicants employed in an accounting firm will receive an invitation, or they must be a CPA or CA, or are studying towards becoming a CPA or CA. Internal and external auditors must have a job as an auditor, not as an accountant. Cooks and chefs, they cannot be working in a takeaway or a fast food businesses to be eligible for the nomination. Now let's look at the third stream, which is skilled workers living offshore. For this stream, Migration Queensland criteria requires you to have a points test result of 80 or higher for the 190 unless otherwise specified, and 65 or higher for the 491. You also need to have an occupation on the Offshore Queensland Skilled Occupation List, also known as QSOL. You also need proficient English or higher except where otherwise specified, and have a minimum of 3 years of post-study work experience except where otherwise specified. QSOL has a good mix of occupations including engineering, health, teaching and trade occupations. Some occupations require higher work experience and some occupations are only available for a 491 visa. Migration Queensland has advised that invitations will go to the highest points per occupation, and this is likely to vary for each occupation. Other requirements may be considered where there are a large number of EOIs for a particular occupation on the same points, example, regional location, years of work experience. EOIs will remain in the queue based on the points when they were originally lodged. Please also note, applicants must meet all requirements at the time EOI is submitted. We will cover the fourth stream, which is the small business owner stream, in a separate video. Now let's look at some of the frequently asked questions for this visa. Let's look at the first one. So Migration Queensland's processing time is currently around 4 to 6 weeks from the receipt of a completed application and processing fee. It may take longer in peak processing season depending on the number of applications in the queue. They are unable to answer any inquiries regarding an applicant's place in the queue as it takes resources away from the processing of applications and extends processing times further. So the answer to next one is yes. The Australian government has amended the Migration Act 1958 to allow applicants subject to a Section 48 bar to lodge a visa application from within Australia for certain skilled visa subclasses. From 13th November 2021, onshore applicants affected by the Section 48 bar can apply for the following 3 skilled visas, which is the subclass 491, 190 and the skilled employer-sponsored regional visa subclass 494. The legislative change will mean Section 48 will no longer be a barrier to these onshore skilled migrants applying for Queensland's State Nomination. For the next one, applicants nominated by the Queensland Government agree to live and work in the state of Queensland for a period of 2 years for subclass 190 and 3 years for subclass 491 and must advise their office of their contact and employment details once settled in Queensland? So the answer to this one is no. This also includes PhD and doctorate graduates. You must have finished 100% of your studies prior to lodging an expression of interest. For the next one, no. Migration Queensland only considers post-qualification paid work experience towards the minimum work experience requirement. Work experience must be full-time with a minimum of 35 hours per week. So for this one, no. State nomination does not guarantee a visa grant from the Department of Home Affairs. The answer to this one is yes. And the answer to this one is no. However, if you have a completion letter from your institute stating you have finished your course, it will be considered on a case-to-case basis, providing you meet all other requirements for the pathway you are applying under. So the answer to this is yes, but only if you have full-time work rights. That is, you are a dependent of a master's or PhD student or have temporary full-time work rights. Migration Queensland will not accept a second expression of interest from the same applicant for renomination within 6 months of the first nomination being issued. This also extends to error with points. Make sure you thoroughly check your EOI to ensure your points are correct before submitting it. After a 6 months period from the first nomination, you can submit a new expression of interest if you continue to meet Queensland State Nomination criteria and the program is open. Okay, so the answer to this is because the MQ database and Skill Select are not linked, as Skill Select is a Department of Home Affairs portal. Migration Queensland does not know when you have made changes to your EOI, which may increase your points. You will remain in a queue in the order of the points you had when you first lodged your EOI. This is because there may be many applicants in the queue in front of you with higher points. 80 points is the minimum we will accept for the 190. So 80 points is the minimum that Migration Queensland will accept for the 190. So this one, no. This was a requirement in 2020-21 financial year. These statements, which were sent via email, are now not required or used as part of the assessment of your skilled application. So these are all the commonly asked questions that I wanted to answer in this video today. If you have any other questions and would like to apply for a 190 or 491 with Migration Queensland, please book through the link provided in the description below.